Don't bother looking for his silhouette. This time, Chaplin is behind the camera. A Woman of Paris was made in 1922. It was Charlie Chaplin's first production for United Artists, which he had founded 3 years earlier with Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, and D.W. Griffith. Chaplin was then 33 and had long considered the idea of directing a dramatic motion picture. The story concerns two young people engaged to one another and who, separated by a cruel twist of fate, meet again in Paris a few years later. Though Jean has remained faithful to his artistic aspirations, Marie has become the mistress of a debonair but cynical man about town, Pierre. Chaplin immediately saw this film as a watershed in his career, so that's why for once he decided to put aside his beloved tramp costume and not act in the film. Edna Purviance, who was his real-life companion and his partner in half of his earlier films, played the female lead. Chaplin based the film's story on the confidences of a certain Peggy Hopkins Joyce.
The term gold digger was coined in honor of Peggy around 1920.
A dancer friend of Peggy's, herself one of the Ziegfeld girls.
After she divorced her first millionaire with $1 million settlement, she became a Ziegfeld girl, from which strategic launching she went on to net, believe it or not, 4 more millionaire husbands in rapid succession. In 1922, she arrived in Hollywood, bent on a film career. When she visited Charlie's studio, he was intrigued by this former country girl and self-made woman of the world. They were inseparable for a couple of weeks. They even took a trip to Catalina Island. And Hollywood gossip marked Chaplin as Peggy's 6th conquest. But Peggy was soon to realize that Charlie was not to become one of her more profitable ventures and moved on to more promising quarry. It was Charlie who gained from the liaison, which he was to describe as bizarre but brief. Peggy had given him the idea for his next film.
Originally, Chaplin intended to call his film Public Opinion and then Destiny. He even considered a good dozen other titles before settling on A Woman of Paris, making it clear that his film was in no way intended as a satire of the American way of life. Still, when the film was released in 1923, the public stayed away and several states banned it on grounds of immorality. 80 years on, A Woman of Paris, an unjustly underrated film, represents an important milestone in the history of motion pictures and remains a benchmark for many filmmakers.
I can tell you exactly what I remember. It must have been 1923 or 4. I knew quite a lot about films, but only in a very superficial and the way the ordinary public thinks about films. And then I saw that Chaplin had made a film in which he wasn't appearing, called A Woman of Paris, and I was absolutely knocked flat. Because suddenly the whole medium grew up before my eyes. Nobody had ever really done any realistic films at all before. Suddenly here was a grown-up film with people behaving as they do in life. And scenes treated with an enormous sophistication, like the sequence I always remembered all my life was the sequence where Monjou comes into the flat and she's furious with him and with life and everything and throws her pearl necklace out of the window and he roars with laughter. And I remember so clearly her coming in, and he's roaring with laughter on the sofa, and she just says, "Idiot." I remember this one-word title. This was stayed with me for the whole of my life. So suddenly, to suddenly see such an intelligent and yet innocent sophistication, because there were many things about the film which were really, in a way, innocent. But it's a progenitor, obviously, of Monsieur Verdoux later on. But it's a much more grown-up film than Verdoux. But still, I was only 18, and the cinema had seemed to me up to then something quite different. Suddenly, it grew up and I grew up. And it's directly responsible for my own rather over-serious attitude to making films.
You know, when I listen to Michael Powell, I agree with him in many ways. This is a grown-up film, and it is very real. It has more realism, this film, than many films that are made today. But another thing I liked about that scene, that's when the woman has told her lover upstairs, I want to get married, I want to be a mother, I want to have babies. And from the window, Chaplin is then also showing us maybe what motherhood could be. He shows us a mother who is very stressed, very poor, 2 children, running after, screaming, whatever, a man in front, no connection between the mother and the father. He shows us motherhood, babies, is maybe not the ideal that people would like to see. And this is so original to show from a window, from the point of view, very seldom, I would think, in these days, maybe it's the first time it's done, to show the reality of life while we, the audience, and the 2 main characters of the movie are watching from the window. I like that a lot.
Montabelle was for years one of Chaplin's favorite assistants.
In his new film, I heard him say he wanted to explore the limits of the expressiveness he'd experienced through 8 years of film work. The range, the subtlety, and the sophistication of the sentiments and motives that could be revealed in pictures.
I was struck by the film because it was real. I didn't really remember that Chaplin had this in him. I've seen so many movies where he has been the main character. Now I see a film and he's not in it at all. And I see the same thing as he did in his persona. I see a man who directs a film where he shows the good side of a human being and the bad side. He doesn't show heroes and he doesn't show horrible people. He just shows us what a human being is like. And even today, again, you don't see that in movies. They're either very good or very bad in most movies. And that's what impressed me with this movie, that Chaplin shows us, just like Bertolt Brecht did, you show one side of a person and then you show the other side, and that is what makes a person interesting.
During Chaplin's brief liaison with Peggy Hopkins Joyce, Peggy had pointed out in a restaurant Adolphe Menjou, the actor, as having the perfect Parisian style. And as I was friendly with Menjou, I recommended him to Charlie.
I discovered that Chaplin had the habit of lunching on Hollywood Boulevard at Armstrong Carlston's or at Musso and Frank's.
Menjou was one of the few actors of French origin in Hollywood at the time.
I made a point of arriving for lunch at the same restaurant and the same times as Chaplin, always wearing an elegant outfit I reckoned would give the impression of a boulevardier. This in itself didn't surprise anyone. Hollywood restaurants at the lunchtime are regularly filled with movie actors in makeup and costume. It was more conspicuous, I have to admit, when I asked a waiter loud enough for Chaplin to hear for fresh escargot in white wine sauce. Either this play acting or a reel of one of my films persuaded Chaplin to interview me at last. This in itself was unusual, cause Chaplin usually hated to interview actors because he felt so bad afterwards if he could not give them the job. He seemed to find me okay for the part, but was somewhat startled by my salary demands.
Chaplin, he's a male man, and the way he looked at women, I think, is very often from the male way of seeing women. But in this movie, he went in with great interest and looked at women. There are two main characters there, the mother of the artist and Mary, the woman whose destiny we follow, and they do change, and he cares about them, and he shows their good sides. He follows why they are good, why they make good choices, and at the same time he shows very negative things with them. He shows the mother, crying to make her son make very bad choices, giving the son guilt so he will deny the woman he wants to marry, actually driving her son to suicide. It's two women who drive one man to suicide, and over his body, when he's dead, they understand it, and their hands find each other. It's a feminine way of showing women.
I remember shooting began on November 27th, 1922, and continued for 7 months. Even in this elaborate feature, Chaplin worked without a script. It's a fact which already surprised commentators at the time. But in fact, by the time he came to shoot the film, the scenario, worked out over the preceding months in masses of notes, was so precise in Chaplin's mind that a normal screenplay would have been superfluous, even a distraction. And it shows that Chaplin, once on the set, worked with confidence and precision. We had a basic idea of the story. Then we would do the incident every day. We'd shoot for 3 or 4 days, then lay off for 2 weeks and rewrite and perfect it and rehearse it and rarefy it. Charlie had the patience of Job. Nothing was too much trouble. A real perfectionist.
I understand he had no script. He didn't make a script. He knew what he wanted to tell, and then he told the story from the beginning to the end. And even though maybe scene number 2 is in her bedroom and scene number 6 is in her bedroom, he didn't do number 2 in the bedroom and number 6 in the bedroom at the same time. Oh no, he did scene 3, 4, 5. And then he went back to the bedroom, which is a very expensive way of doing the story, but it's also great for the actors, great for the cinematographer, great for the storytelling, specifically if you don't have a script. He gives himself material by shooting this way, and I wish we could do movies this way today, but we can't. Movies today are industrial, You look at the cost first and then at the art. And I know as a director, very often it's things I would really like to do. And it's always what will it cost against what would it give the movie. And it's very difficult to explain what it will give a movie. So the cost will most often win. But if you are Charlie Chaplin, of course, he's discussing with himself. He was making this movie with his own company, and it's his own discussion.
I have to admit, not until we started shooting did I begin to realize that we were making a novel and exciting picture. He had one wonderful, unforgettable line that he kept repeating over and over throughout the picture. "Don't sell it," he would say. "Remember, they're picking at you."
That's fantastic. I'm going to use that when when I'm going to direct again. And you can see it with these actors. This is in a time long before people had learned in movies to act very natural and whatever. They are acting very natural. And watching this movie, I wasn't even missing that they spoke, because it's realistic acting. It's not Stanislavski, but a lot of actors do that bad anyway. And in terms of acting, what he makes them do, for example, when you see a scene with the masseurs and all these chatty women, the courtesans are there and they are discussing, you know, love and who's been unfaithful to whom and why. And you can see her anger and her feelings about these women, you know. She is a working woman and she has to do work to earn money. And you just see her face. But what is great with Chaplin's way of directing this, a stupid director would then make her, being a masseuse, do very hard on the woman that she despises and whatever. No, she does her masseusing thing very right in the way it should be. It's just in the expression of her face. And this is where he is a great storyteller, where he's a great actor's director, and his imagery. And maybe some of this imagery today may seem, oh, we've seen it before. Sure, we've seen some of it before. But this was in 1922, when no one had made features films like this. This is the first time. It's like when you see Ingmar Bergman's Persona. Today, yes, it doesn't have that same thing because so many people have copied it in different ways. But when you do it for the first time, it is incredible. And many things in this movie is done for the first time, and it probably hasn't been done better later.
Because of the censorship boards in various states at that time, Charlie had to indicate the relationship between the two main characters in a way that would not be obvious or offensive. He accomplished it in a manner that was amazingly subtle.
First, Chaplin had me pick up a pipe from the table and light it, but it was no good, cause Revel was not the pipe-smoking type. Then he considered having the maid bring me a pair of slippers, but that was out of key because I had called to take Mary out to dinner. Finally, Charlie thought of the handkerchief business you can see in the film. But the property man had not dressed the drawers of the chiffonier, so I went to my dressing room and brought back several handkerchiefs and one of my dress collar, and it fell out of the drawer. This gave Charlie an idea for a later scene in which the maid accidentally dropped a collar and thus disclosed to Mary's former sweetheart that she was living with Revel. Little touches like this gave the picture a flavor that was new to picture making.
He chose to make this movie so nobody would believe, oh, this is in the United States, and then the censor would be even more critical than they already were. So he made them non-Americans because Parisians, we know anyway, are more immoral. But what do I know? That's what we always hear. You know what I think is immoral? I don't think it's immoral to love each other without wedlock. I don't think it's immoral to love all over the place if that's what you feel like. But to sell yourself for love or to buy for love, yeah, I think that's immoral because that's taking away the pleasure of what love itself can be. Because actually, I think this is even part of this story. I think Marie and Pierre, I think they loved each other. So if she hadn't been bought and if he didn't have to buy, I think they would have recognized, we really love each other. Why don't we stay together, married or whatever?
brief sequence of the railway station, which has a place in film history.
Raleigh Tutherrow was the chief cameraman for Chaplin's finest films.
It was filmed between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. on the night of November 29th to 30th. That innovation, which aroused so much admiring comment when the film appeared, was in fact dictated by economy. The scene required Marie to stand on the station as the fateful train for Paris arrives. In order to save trouble and the expense of simulating a French train, I simply cut apertures to represent the windows of a train in a 10-foot piece of board, and then I had it drawn across the front of a powerful spotlight. The light cast upon Marie's face appeared like the reflection from the lights of a moving train. That effect was done in 8 takes only. Hey, did you notice that Charlie makes a brief appearance in that scene as a clumsy porter?
I liked what this movie shows towards the end, when it's fade in and fade out from scenes, what is happening at the same time. And this is when Marie has told her lover, number 2, Pierre, it's over. And lover number 2, who smiles, what does he care? And does he really care? And it shows through a long night what happens with Pierre and what happens with her. It's fade in and fade out, and it's happening at the same time for both of them. So it's like, it's the page of a picture book.
The final scene, and thus the last day of shooting, remember that Chaplin shot his films in the exact order of the story, with Ravel and his secretary driving along a country road, was filmed on Monday, June 25th, 1923. 1 year, 1 month, and 14 days after Chaplin had begun to work on the script, he completed cutting the film. The film had twin openings in Los Angeles and New York on October 1st of the same year. And, unusually, Chaplin addressed audiences in a brief and surprising note, distributed at the doors of movie theaters.
No doubt, while you're waiting, I can have a little heart-to-heart talk with you. I've been thinking that the public wants a little more realism in pictures, whereby a story is pursued to the logical ending. I would like to get your ideas on the subject, for I'm sure that those of us who are producing pictures do not know. We only guess. In my first serious drama...
Well, Chaplin did write a letter for premiere, you know, to the audience. I really don't know what you will feel about my picture, and this is what I wanted to say, but maybe I'm wrong, but you are the viewers, you are the audience, so whatever you feel is right. It's almost, you know, begging for forgiveness, like he's doing something wrong with his film. And I think maybe that is very much part of an actor, you know, that as an actor you are used to applause, or you're used to recognition of what you do, and he couldn't bear to be unloved, unapplauded. You need it. And the sad thing is, this movie was not a success when it was shown. It was a kind of flop. And I think only today will we really recognize how marvelous it is, how good it is. And you watch it and you don't feel you are back in 1922. You just see a different way of making films, but it's made by a genius.
Moment of the time. However, if I have failed in my effort to entertain you, I feel it will be my loss. Nevertheless, I enjoyed making it, and sincerely hope you will enjoy seeing it. Sincerely, Charles Chaplin.